What's up, everybody? It's your boy DJ. I want to play a game. Well, that was awesome. And welcome to another episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast. On this week's episode, Joel and I will take a look at the world of movie news and movie trailers that have dropped throughout the week and commentate on them for you guys. And then we will have our joint reviews of The Killing of a Sacred Deer, the new film from Yorgos Lanthimos, the director of The Lobster from 2015. Joel will have a mini review of Suburbicon, and I will have a mini review of Jigsaw, the 8th installment of a franchise this year. That's not the only one, because Fast and Furious had the same thing. I never thought I'd say that ever in my life. So what are we going to think about all these movies, and what is Joel going to think about Suburbicon? What am I going to think about Jigsaw as a massive Saw fan? Well, you're going to have to sit down, relax, and find out. Hello, and welcome to the Halloween episode of Reel Me In, a movie podcast where you didn't really ask for, but hey, we're going to give it to you anyways. We're going to get all creepy and sadistic on the show, and I'm going to make Joel feel super uncomfortable. What we typically do is we go over some movie news and trailers and commentate on them for you guys, and then we will have reviews of movies that come out throughout the week, and of course the box office results to accompany those movies. This is episode 205, and hey, listen, if you're new to the show, welcome. Hopefully you stick around and enjoy it. If you're a returning listener, we love you all as well. So episode 205, like I said, on this week's episode, we will have a joint review of The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie, who directed The Lobster from a couple years ago, and it's also the new A24 film, because they have 5 movies that come out every single week. And then, of course, Joel's going to have a mini review of the new George Clooney directed film starring Matt Damon, Suburbicon, and I am going to be reviewing Jigsaw in my mini review this week. So in a way, it's kind of an all scary episode because I already saw Joel's grade on Suburbicon, so it could be a frightening score. So that's how I'm going to equate it to Halloween. So yeah, so that's this week's episode, guys. So it should be a lot of fun. And before we begin, please spread this around and let people know this is a definitive movie podcast that you listen to every single week, and you just want to get other people excited about it, because hey, listen, if you're not a movie fan, hopefully we can convince you to be one. We're passionate about it, and this is what we do. And I'm also going to do something special. If and only if this episode gets at least 100 downloads, I will, for the next week's episode, if you comment on it, I will actually get you a copy of Cooties, speaking of horror films, and I will sign it for you, because I have a quote on the back of it, and I thought that'd be a pretty cool little prize to give away. So only if this episode gets over 100 downloads, then I will do that for someone out there that wants it. So that will be the goal for you guys. Let's get that there. But I am one of your co-hosts, Chase Lee, and so I have another co-host on the show, and he's sitting over there in the corner, probably from lack of sleep, because he's, watched so many movies this past weekend, and of course he tried to squeeze in Stranger Things Season 2, so, he's like half dead right now, which is also appropriate. He's a half of a zombie this week. Joel, how are we doing?
Yep, that's what I'm going as is for Halloween, except that it won't be a costume. I'm doing pretty well. I'm, like you said, it's been a pretty eventful week with Stranger Things. I'm not quite done with Season 2 yet, but getting there, and it's really good so far. So I hear that the next episode's fairly divisive, but I'm excited to see where this all goes, because I'm a fan. And as for the movies, well, it's been an interesting week, let's just say. So pretty good. Otherwise, in my life, I'm just been a work week. We at work we had our boss who's away on her honeymoon. So, our mission was to be diligent at work, and we ended up being too diligent, getting too much done, so that we don't have anything to do anymore. And so it'll be interesting to see how we can find things to do at work, other than helping customers. Little tasks throughout the day have been kind of finished, so what do we do now? But yeah, so other than that, it's been kind of just a whatever week.
Yeah, it's just been one of those weeks where it's just been kind of blah. Yeah, I finished Stranger Things season 2. I quite liked it. Just as good as the first, even better. I just love the fact that this show just, it doesn't lose its edge, doesn't lose its charm. It's just, it's just a very entertaining kind of just show. You can just eat it up and watch it all in one day. That's just how bingeable it is. But I highly recommend it if you are a fan of the first season and you still haven't seen season 2 yet, or if you've never watched Stranger Things and you want to hop on it, I'd suggest it. It's not my favorite Netflix show, but it's definitely one of the most bingeable that they have. So that's pretty much been my weekend. I didn't really do too much. I saw Jigsaw on Thursday night, which was really fun, by the way, because as a Saw fan, I didn't see the first 2 in theaters, obviously because I was just too young at the time, but since the third one, I've actually seen all of them in theaters. And, when I saw 6 and Saw 7 in theaters, of course, I went during the day, so obviously there's not going to be that many people, but there might have been like me and 2 other people in there. So I was like, oh no, that's okay. This franchise is dying. There's only those crazy nut jobs out there like myself who like it, and that's about it. Believe it or not, Jigsaw, I think it was like a 130 seat theater. It was like 3/4 full, and I kind of surprised. And I was like, oh man, is this going to like reinvigorate this franchise? I really don't want it to, because after the final chapter, quote unquote, with number 7, I really didn't want to see another one. But with this one, I don't even think it's a continuation, and I'll get to that when I get to my mini review. But yeah, so I'm excited to do this episode. This is going to be a lot of fun. We get to talk about a couple scary movies, and Joel's going to talk about something that happened in a suburban town somewhere. So in order to get to that, let's start with some movie news. And before we get into the movie news, just one last thing. Sorry to keep dragging the intro out, but if you want to just skip ahead to the movie reviews, I will have the times in the description, so you can just jump ahead to that if you don't want to listen to the news and the trailers. But speaking of the news, Joel, you are in charge of the news this week, so what's happening in the movie world?
Yeah, so this has become quite the turbulent affair. Let's just say, we talked a couple weeks ago about the business involving Harvey Weinstein and the accusations and allegations of sexual harassment, assault, rape by women in Hollywood from their younger years when they were first starting out. And we talk about consequences. Things are happening to vilify essentially Harvey Weinstein, and which is great because we don't get a lot of that, it seems. And especially in Hollywood, it seems to be swept under the rug a lot, and this has not been. And legal consequences aside, we don't know what those are going to be yet. There are certainly some professional consequences. The company's in disarray, and they really had 2 plays this season for the Oscars, and one of those was The Current War with good old Beggs Benedict Cucumber Patch. And that one was taken off the schedule. I believe it's going to be released next year sometime. I don't know if that's been redated yet. I've forgotten. But the other one was Wind River, which came out in August. And, it kind of had been reaching a bit of popularity in terms of Jeremy Renner's performance and, being a major possibility for Best Actor. But, what we found out is essentially the Weinstein Company name is going to be redacted from the movie. So this is interesting because it begs a really good question that Chase asked me in the notes. Do you feel bad for owning their movies at home? And I just wanted to, place this question on the audience out there. Let us know in the comments if you feel uncomfortable now owning the Weinstein Company movies. You kind of know what some of the more popular ones are: King's Speech, The Artist, Shakespeare in Love, and the like. And I will say that it's going to sound bad, and I'm just going to be honest here. I feel weird, maybe not bad. I feel weird However, I'm not gonna let this make me feel worse than I feel like I should, because for me, I'm so kind of detached from that entire thing that it doesn't make me feel complicit in any sort of success, because I know now that basically he's left the company, so he's not going to be getting any money for this stuff, from this point forward. He's no longer a part of the company. It's just Bob Weinstein now. And, while Bob Weinstein might not have handled this very well because he clearly knew about it, I think that came out like last week or something, that he was told multiple times about this stuff and did nothing. That's a different kind of complicity, I think. And so for me, I certainly feel weird. I don't feel good about owning. I'm probably not going to stop owning them. But that's just because I like physical media, so I'm going to buy it. But I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from Chase in a second, but I want to hear from you guys. Do you feel uncomfortable about this? I will say something else, though, and this is actually involving a movie that I'm reviewing on my website next week. It's called Amityville: The Awakening. In the producer credits for a lot of the Weinstein-backed horror movies, you'll find Harvey and Bob Weinstein's names. Sometimes, it's very few times I've found, you'll just find Bob Weinstein. But about probably 85% of the time, it's both of them. And when I was watching the movie, I noticed something in the opening credits that was interesting. And I actually feel like somebody went in there really quickly before this movie dropped on Google Play yesterday. That it was very interesting because there was a producer credit that included Bob Weinstein's name, but it was weird because it was produced by was one line, the next line was just Bob Weinstein, and then below that were the people I guess involved with Weinstein and his part of it, and there were I think 3 or 4 different names, and they were their own line underneath him, and it felt weird to me because I feel like Harvey Weinstein's name was in there until recently. And so because it just seems like it from the way that the shot is framed in order to fit that into the or I guess the way that the words seem to be placed, you could fit another name next to Bob Weinstein. And it's very interesting because you're starting to see these consequences kind of roll out. I don't know, maybe this was just Bob. I'm not sure. I can't say, but it just feels to me like until very recently when somebody went in and edited his name out of it, his name was there. And so you're seeing these consequences. And it's interesting to see that because, again, we don't see this very often right now. We see this stuff being swept under the rug and treated like it's no big deal or whatever from people, even in the early stages of this news story, we saw that, with people saying, well, we knew, but, we didn't really do anything because it's just a known fact. You saw that, Seth MacFarlane joke that was brought back up from the Oscars presentation where, it's essentially become the punchline of a joke. And now that, this stuff is being talked about more widely with the #MeToo campaign, it's you're seeing genuine consequences, whether it's in the court of public opinion or whether it's, in an actual court or something like this where the backlash has stretched all the way to the company that he owns, removing his names from movies. It's just very interesting to see. So, Chase, do you feel uncomfortable owning them at home now?
It's really weird because I'm kind of like you where, yeah, I feel pretty bad for owning it, but at the same time, for instance, the most recent one I own, I just got I think a month ago, which was The Hateful Eight. That was one of the bigger Weinstein movies from last year and probably one of the bigger ones in general just because, that company's not doing so well. And, I mean, I bought it even before I knew about this story and, I feel bad for owning 6 Kevin Smith movies and 6 Tarantino movies, the Scary Movie franchise, and whatever the hell else that they distributed. And you're right. I don't want to feel worse about it than I already do. I don't feel comfortable, owning it. But this is before I had even knowledge of all of this, and I don't condone anything that he's done. I feel gross for owning them, but it's like you said, it's really nothing that we knew about, and it's just kind of laid upon us. But you and I were talking about this. What was it, like a week ago or whatever? I even brought up. I said, I was like, Wind River. I think it's done. Like, there's no way that Weinstein would push that movie.
The sudden transition here is not going to help it, because people are still going to associate it. The fact that it's a news story, that it's separating itself from the Weinstein Company, makes it about the Weinstein Company, whatever their intentions. So it's now going to be known as the movie that got away from the Weinsteins, and then from there you immediately go to Harvey. So it's not going to help the movie. It's certainly not going to help Jeremy Renner's chances, and because he really was, I think, a major player in the season until just now. And
let's get something straight. Like, it's not Jeremy Renner's fault. Like, he got wrapped up into this situation with this movie, and I don't blame him for wanting to take a step back and really not be associated with it anymore. So, it's just if they thought they had any chance of pushing that for Oscars, you might as well kiss it goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much gone. So anyway, let us know, listeners, what you think about all of this in the comments section, because both of us are really, really curious to hear from you on how all of this is shaping up. Whether you're glad that these kinds of repercussions are happening, whether you think that's enough, whether you I feel like it's pretty clear. I don't think it's enough. I mean, I think it's great, but I don't think it's enough. So just let us know what you think about all of this, and if there's any other bits of news. I usually don't like covering this stuff, to be completely honest, because it feels like tabloid stuff. But to me,
it does. But the only reason I wanted to bring it up is because the distribution of Wind River now is being picked up by it was a Native American production company, right? So that's kind of like, it's almost like a slap in the face, which is great. I'm glad that they're taking Weinstein's logo out of it and whatever they need to do, and they're actually going to have it be distributed and released when it comes out on VOD and whatnot from a company of people that are portrayed in the movie. It's just, I don't know, it's almost it's like what Joel said. It's not like this is like a good news story, because it's so icky just to even talk about it, but it's a step in the right direction, I guess, and that's all we can really say about it, because like I said, I don't really feel comfortable with talking about this stuff, but I do think that this is a humongous type of story to let us know that if anything like this ever happens in the future, there's going to be some major repercussions. And if a lot of people are starting to come out now with stories of their own abuse and whatnot, and they're really taking people down, and so I'm hoping this does that, and you can keep, unfortunately, harassment and abuse in the conversation, so we can stop when people actually do this and actually take the right precautions, kick them out of the company, have them go to jail, hopefully, and it's just stories like this that I hope just pushes into the right direction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. I think it's just like what you said. It's a small step in the right direction. Right now, I think small steps are. I think we definitely need a big step, but we should be thankful at least for the small stuff that's happening. That shows that people are not going to tolerate this. And So for our next news story, this is interesting. A few weeks ago we found out that Cate Blanchett's going to be playing Lucille Ball in a movie that's going to be written and I can't remember if it's going to be directed, but it's going to be written by Aaron Sorkin. And now we get another showbiz legend who was kind of defined by her fame, but also by a pretty tumultuous life. And we're going to get a slice of one of those experiences from her, and that's going to be Renee Zellweger, who's going to play Judy Garland in a movie called Judy, and it's going to be set during a 5-week run of sold out concerts in London. It's going to be taken on by director Rupert Gold. I believe that he was the one who made goodness me, I just lost it. Hold on, Rupert Gold. Let's see. So I had the name of the movie on the tip of my tongue. I'm going to look it up really fast. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I think he's a stage director. I don't know if he's made any movies. Anyway, in any case, he's going to be making, I guess, his film debut with this movie, which, again, takes place in London in 1968. And I'm excited about this. I've always been really fascinated by Garland's life. You know, she's also the mother of Liza Minnelli, and this is interesting. I'm excited to see this. I think it starts filming next year, so we'll probably see it late next year. I suspect it's not going to be one that takes very long to make this kind of movie, but I'm guessing that we'll see this next year. So I'm excited to see that. I guess I'll wrap two other bits of news into this as well, because there's been some casting news this week. The other one is that Adam Driver, good old Kylo Ren, is going to be in Black Klansman, which is the Spike Lee movie that we mentioned several weeks ago about a black FBI agent who infiltrates himself into the KKK. This is going to be really interesting. Seems like Adam Driver plays another agent, I believe, or another something in the FBI. And, of course, that's the movie where Spike Lee is moving on from Denzel Washington to Denzel Washington's son. This is going to be interesting. And then the biggest news in terms of casting this week, Zachary Levi, who is Chuck to those fans of the TV series, has been cast as Shazam in the DC universe. This was after, rumors of like The Rock years ago being in the movie, and I think there was somebody else who was in talks, but they've settled on Zachary Levi, so they should be making this pretty soon. I think it's the director of Annabelle Creation and Lights Out. David F. Sandberg is taking this on, making a major shift from horror to superhero movie, sort of like James Wan with Furious 7. And so I think that he's kind of perfect casting. I've always found Zachary Levi to be really likable and kind of play he kind of plays the douchebag pretty well. And Shazam always kind of strikes me as a bit of a douchebag in terms of personality outside of his powers. So, Chase, what do you think about all of this?
What's really funny is Renee Zellweger went off the map for a little bit, and then she came back last year, really strong with a third installment, her Bridget Jones franchise, and you're like, where's Renee been? Has she been hiding under a rock or something? And then now you hear about this, and it's like, wow, she's really kind of reviving her career, which is kind of cool. I've never found Renee Zellweger to be a terrible actress at all. Like, she can do some cheesy rom-coms every now and then, but she's never struck me as someone that's like, oh, she's so awful, I can't stand her. I've just really never seen that many movies with her in it. And I know that she's, been in, Oscar-worthy pictures, whether it be like a Chicago or Cold Mountain. So, I know she's got that caliber in her, but she went off for a while, and now she's back. And so her tackling a biopic basically as her second movie into her kind of reincarnation is kind of cool, because you figure after Bridget Jones's Baby or whatever the hell it was called, you figure she would kind of get back into that rom-com genre a little bit, but it looks like she's going to kind of go for Oscar territory, which is, hey, I'm You do you, Renee. I've never had a problem with you, so you do you. As far
it'll be interesting if they if they rush the Lucille Ball movie and then this to be released at the same time. It'll kind of be like it'll be weird because it's like Judy Garland going up against Lucille Ball at the Oscars, and so that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if that's the battle we're gonna get, I'm totally willing to see that because it's just funny that Kate Blanchett would go up against Renee Zellweger. Who would ever thought that sentence would come out of my mouth? But yeah, no, so I'm cool with that, and I'm cool with the Adam Driver one. Listen, Adam Driver is one of those enigmas, man. When you're watching the Meyerowitz stories, you're like, okay, I'm getting into this movie. Whoa, Adam Driver, where the hell did you come from? And so, because, he was in Baumbach's other movie, While We're Young, so he's got a relationship there. He loves doing indie films, and that's what I love about Adam Driver. I haven't seen much of, Daisy Ridley outside of Star Wars, so I don't know where her career is going to go. I'm going to finally see, a movie beyond the Star Wars franchise, not next week, but 2 weeks from now with the Murder on the Orient Express. So I want to see her kind of bloom. With Adam Driver, I already knew his career going into Star Wars, so him being in big blockbuster franchises doesn't really faze me. I like him more when he's in the smaller stuff. So having him in this movie that's going to be, very probably a political thriller type of angle, I'm really excited to kind of see him tackle that. So I have no issues with that. As far as Zachary Levi, what an interesting pick, because I would have never thought that he would be in a bigger role in a superhero film, because he's also one of the guys from the Thor franchise. So you figure when you watch the Thor movies, he's charming, he's likable, that's where he fits as a side character. And then whoops, he's being boosted up to a main character. And when I heard about this casting news, I immediately thought, or I try to imagine conversation in my head between him and Dwayne Johnson, because Dwayne's going to be playing Black Adam, which is the foe of Shazam in that universe. So I'm trying to imagine a conversation, them going back and forth, and I can see it. I need to see more of Zachary Levi. I never saw Chuck, but I've seen him in the Thor movies, and he has a prominent role in those Thor movies. So yeah, and I think with him being charming and likable, I think it will actually help, because Shazam is actually, for people that don't know, he's a kid. He's a kid that, when he says Shazam, lightning strikes him, and he becomes this, giant superpower, whose powers are equivalent to Superman. So Zachary Levi's kind of got that boyish look, I guess, and his charm and likability, I think, will play into the kind of kid aspect with it. I need to see more from him, but on the surface level and what I've seen in Thor, I'm cool with it. I'm willing to see. I mean, you guys have to keep in mind, even though I haven't seen much from him, if Warner Brothers is putting that much faith to put basically an unknown actor into a big comic book role, I'm cool with that. Because yeah, he was on Chuck, and that was a popular NBC show, but beyond that, no one ever talks about this guy, and so he's pretty much an unknown to 99% of the world, except for the 1% of film fans, and I guess Chuck fans. But if they saw him in the audition room, they saw something, they saw that spark, and they want to go with it, then sure, I'm down for it, because regardless of what you think of the DC films so far, their casting has been pretty on point for the most part. Jesse Eisenberg is probably the biggest just casting mistake I've seen them do so far. I actually don't think Jared Leto is terrible as the Joker, but he could have been in a better movie. But with Ben Affleck as Batman, great. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, great. Jason Momoa as Aquaman, great. Ezra Miller, Flash. I mean, just the list keeps going on and on to where their casting is always on point for the most part, 99% of the time. So I'm totally cool with actually all three of these casting choices.
Yeah, I mean, with Zachary Levi, I think he took over that role in the Thor movie. I don't think it was played by him in the first one. Either that or it's the other way around. I can't remember. But it'll be interesting to see him make this kind of shift into sudden, spotlight, because he's kind of been out of it for a while. And he wasn't even really in it. Chuck was popular, but it wasn't some hugely popular thing where he was out there a lot.
It's more of like a cult favorite. It's like, when people are talking to each other, like, man, did you see Chuck back in the day? Yeah, man, I saw Chuck. Like, it's like super underrated. It's like, it's one of those like underground shows where like there's like a hardcore fan base, and like that's probably it.
Yeah, there's going to be an article that drops around the time Shazam comes out from somebody that says Chuck is a great show, and you should feel bad for missing it or something. I'm sure that's going to come out, because I'm sure that somebody somewhere feels that way. I haven't seen it beyond maybe 3 or 4 episodes. I liked them, but I just kind of got on to other things and lost track. But yeah, so that's the casting news. All right, so then there's another thing. This one makes total sense. And it's, segueing from superhero news to superhero news. This totally makes sense. So, in fact, a couple bits of superhero news. So, as we know, Logan was such a success because of its central relationship between Logan and the young Laura is sort of the name she's given, but she's known as X-23. That was a big reason why that movie was so successful with people. And now they're making an X-23 spinoff. It's going to be called Laura, which is neat. And this totally makes sense. I mean, Daphne Keane took off. This gives her a chance to, spread her wings, play the roles, solo. We'll be able to see her in her element. We don't really know if it's going to be and I don't know if it's going to be an origin. I feel like that's probably not going to be the case. It's going to be sort of her own adventure, or at least, circle around her in some way. And this will be a good little star vehicle for her. Maybe get her, into a Daisy Ridley kind of thing where she's doing this and then she's also doing, some other stuff. That would be pretty neat. I'd be interested to see Daphne Keane in another mode. For sure, but this is, in the meantime, very interesting news. I guess the other one is that Deathstroke is going to be a movie. We already knew that from Joe Manganiello. He's going to be making this happen, and they are already courting a director, and that is Gareth Evans. Now, this is not Gareth Edwards, who directed Godzilla and Rogue One. This is Gareth Evans, otherwise known as Gareth Hugh Evans, who made The Raid and The Raid 2. So clearly they're going for that R rating. They're picking a director who is quite familiar with ultraviolence, and they are going with him for this because the character's name is Deathstroke. I mean, come on. It would be a disappointment if this wasn't super violent. So they're going with, or they're courting him. He hasn't officially signed on yet, but I think he's probably close. He's certainly past the talks phase at this point. So this is neat. I always felt like, my hang-ups with the second movie notwithstanding, he really knows how to stage and execute ultraviolence in a way that is well choreographed. It has a sense of geography. It's artful, and I'm really excited to see what he does with something that has obviously more visual effects kind of work. It's going to be pretty neat to see him work around that. And so I like both of these bits of news. Chase, what are you thinking over there?
I agree. I mean, yeah, it makes total sense to have X-23 in her own movie, and a testament to Daphne Keane in that movie, that little movie called Logan. A lot of people, if you have not seen it, believe it or not, she barely has any dialogue, and half of it's in Spanish. So there's a lot of facial acting that has to be required of her, and that ending scene with her and Wolverine, it just tears me every single time. But yeah, it makes total sense. The way Logan ended, I mean, you can definitely tell something is carrying the story forward, and having her kind of being her own thing, I think is absolutely genius. You can continue that same type of Western feel and just have the kind of same tonal pattern as Logan, I think you would knock it out of the park. Joel's right, though. Like, I don't want an origin story. We already got her origin in Logan. I don't need to have to go back to that. She's got her own adventure now. That chapter was wrapped up in Logan, so I don't need to see that. But having her kind of go into the world and really become her own person after everything she has seen in the events of Logan, learning English and, you know, getting new mutant friends and whatnot. I think it's such a great progression of her character, and I would love to see that on the big screen. I'm really curious to see if they're going to, speaking of the same tonal pattern, going with the same rating, because, you know, with the new mutants and whatnot, that's probably going to be PG-13. Dark Phoenix is going to be PG-13. So I'm wondering if this is going to be the one kind of kid-centric X-Men film that they're going to push to an R rating. Now, it would make sense because what Daphne King does in that movie, Logan, it's just, good Lord, some of the stuff she does is pretty violent. It's just as bad and bloody as what Wolverine does. So I think if you transfer that same kind of tonal flow, it makes sense to me, especially when you make over $600 million from Logan. Yeah, you should probably continue that and do not water it down. As far as the Gareth Evans thing, I've never seen the Raid movies. I know, gasp, shock, but I've seen bits and pieces on YouTube with some of the fight sequences, and hell yeah. I mean, if you watch those sequences, Gareth Evans is a perfect pick. Are you kidding me? Like, it's got some of the, like, those scenes that I saw alone had some of the best choreography I had seen in a movie in years. And I'd never even seen the movies yet. So if you can apply that to Deathstroke, which is an assassin, essentially, he's really great with guns, he's really great at combat, then you're going to have one of the best DC movies. Like, if you can just apply his powers and make it, you know, these long, like, just choreographed, like, magical takes, like, it's gonna feel so much better than, like, you know, some, like what Joel said, like, PG-13 watered down garbage. Like, make it hard R, make it violent. Like, you're dealing with a person that is, you know, he's a violent dude. Like, I just don't understand, like, why you would make this, you know, watered down. So yeah, if you're hiring the guy that did both of the Raid films, which have a hard R slapped on them, like, please do that for this one. So yeah, that makes total sense to me. The only thing I've ever seen of Gareth Evans, and I forgot which segment he did a segment in VHS 2, which, speaking of horror films, that is a great anthology movie right there. And it's actually, I like the first one, but I think it's better than the first one. So if he directed one of those segments, I actually like all four of those segments, then cool, sign me up.
Nice. I have not seen the VHS movies. I've watched movies on VHS. Okay, that's my joke for the week.
Wow, Joel, you must be, like, really tired.
Very. Okay, so this last bit of news is one of the most bizarre things I've ever read. Okay,
now just to set this up, like, what happens throughout the week is that Joel and I will send movie information and dick pics. But back to the movie information. So we when we send each other stuff throughout the week, we try to find stuff to, like, one up, like, stories and whatnot. And I sent him the Weinstein thing. I was like, oh my god, like, this is about Wind River switching distribution studios. And I'm sure Joel, when he saw that, he was like, holy crap, like, this is insane. And so he sends me one, literally, I think, was it like a day later? And it was probably even more baffling than the Wind River thing. So Joel, please tell these lovely folks what the hell you sent me.
Yeah, so this is so weird. All right. If you're deep into, like, knowledge of Hollywood productions, you'll probably recognize the name Morgan Creek Productions. It likely from stuff in the 90s, if you watch stuff from the early 90s. It's not a production company that's been super, like, prolific lately, but they were in the 90s. They were called Morgan Creek Productions, and they have rebranded. Somehow, I guess they got funding to do this, and they're coming back, and they are exploiting, and I'm quoting this from them, they are exploiting across multiple platforms some of their library of titles, and there are several here. There's going to be, like, a TV series for Dead Ringers, and I think for Nightbreed, which is the Clive Barker thing, Diabolique, also the Michael Keaton movie Pacific Heights. But the three major ones that are really weird, considering just the material of each of them, they're going to be offering an Ace Ventura reboot. I'll get to that in a second. They're going to be doing Young Guns. I haven't seen Young Guns. I don't think. Maybe like way a long time ago. Maybe part of it. I don't know. They're going to be remaking that. They're already looking for actors to take over for the cast, which included Emilio Estevez, Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen. We'll get back to Charlie Sheen in a second. Lou Diamond Phillips, Casey Shia, whatever, and Dermot Mulroney. These people are probably not going to be in the movie, but they're remaking that. And they're also doing a TV show for it. So that's interesting, I guess. And then Major League, which is the baseball comedy, with Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen is, I guess, I don't know. It's something about Charlie Sheen stuff. I don't know. They're bringing all of this back. I don't get it. But the weirdest one is Ace Ventura, and it's just like, so obviously, you had the two movies in the 90s made like within a year of each other, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, with the great Jim Carrey, who was able to take that material and actually make it funny, at least in terms of the second movie. And I don't get why they're rebooting this, because obviously Jim Carrey's not going to do it. He's, we just talked to this, last week about the documentary about him disappearing into Andy Kaufman and the fact that it changed him. He pretty distinctively turned away from these roles. And, the only one that he really did after that was so goofy and so over the top and so idiosyncratic was The Grinch, which was right after that. So it wasn't during a period of time where it had set in that he needed to change things. And once that did, he was, again, making stuff like Eternal Sunshine. He made Fun with Dick and Jane. He made Yes Man. But he also did The Number 23. He also did, something like The Bad Batch earlier this year. I haven't seen it, but he plays a completely wordless hobo in the movie, a homeless man. No lines of dialogue, no goofy stuff. It's just him, silent, leading this girl somewhere in the dystopia. And so you're not going to have the Jim Carrey level of crazy in the performances, in the performance as Ace Ventura here, because he's not gonna show up. I doubt he even shows up as like a baton handing kind of ceremony thing where he hands off the role in a cameo. I seriously have no idea what they're thinking here. And they also released this really serious, sincere statement about it. They said it because it's episodic in nature, about a pet detective, it also lends itself to a traditional single-camera series franchise. So I guess they're trying to do a series of them? This is so weird to me. It's like, I don't know. I just have nothing to say except this is so weird. Why are they doing this? Who asked for any of this? What's going on? What did you do, Chase? I'm just kidding.
I probably touched myself at night, and Morgan Creek was like, "I'm going to reboot everything." Man, I can't believe they're doing this. Okay, the two I have seen, I've seen Major League. I think that's a pretty funny baseball comedy. Believe it or not, even though Charlie Sheen is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, he's been in some of my favorite comedies ever made. If you guys have never seen the Hot Shot series, then please see those, because Hot Shots Part 2 is one of the funniest kind of satire movies ever, and Charlie Sheen's the head of it. So Major League is also really funny, and then the sequel is PG-13. why. So that one, whatever. I don't have really that much of an emotional attachment to it. The one I do, though, is Ace Ventura. I rewatched it, I want to say like a few weeks ago. It was on HBO, and it's still it's not my favorite Jim Carrey comedy. It will always and forever will be Dumb and Dumber. I absolutely love that one. But in the same year, you had Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura, and The Mask. And this is 1994 was the birth of Jim Carrey movies. And Ace Ventura at the time, when I was a kid, I thought it was like the best thing ever. When you watch it as an adult, there are parts that really hit, but he does kind of go off the rails just a little bit. And you're like, all right, Jim, just kind of reel it back just a little bit. You know what it reminded me of is a couple years ago. It might have been last year. I think it was Universal. They released Kid Pet Detective, like Ace Ventura. It was like a knockoff with a kid, and it's like that straight to DVD garbage is exactly what I picture when they want to reboot this, and it's like, why?
Yeah. It was that kid, Josh Flitter, I think, who did it. He had this like weird period of time where. I don't think he's done anything very significant since then, but he was in like Nancy Drew, License to Wed. He was just this annoying little kid who would show up in movies because at some point, I think the previous year, he was in something and people thought he was funny, so Hollywood tried to make him a thing, and then he kind of just disappeared by 2008. But they tried to bring it back, and I think that he was the one that they cast in the role, and I didn't see it. As soon as I saw the trailer, I was just like, yeah, no. I don't like this kid. I don't like the fact that they're trying to cash in on the series like this. You know, I would love to see the Jim Carrey of right now be Ace Ventura. I would love that. I wish for better things for him.
Whoa, Joel, take that back.
But I love that.
Whoa. In 2014, I thought he could recapture that magic with Dumb and Dumber sequel, and it came across as desperate and weird, and he should never do those goofy comedies again. That was a time capsule. Those movies are great for the time. You could rewatch them and laugh, but it was so depressing to see Jim Carrey do that shtick in the Dumb and Dumber sequel, and it was even more depressing to see Jeff Daniels, who came off of an Emmy win, by the way, to do that, and it just, no. I'm totally against that. Do not have Jim Carrey do this goofy shit anymore, Joel. You were wrong about this, sir.
Well, I'm just saying, like, maybe find a way for him to commit, because he certainly didn't commit to Dumb and Dumber 2. It wasn't one of his finer hours. You could tell by the look on his face that he felt like this was a waste of time in that movie. Maybe find a way. I mean, it's going to be hard considering it's a series about a guy who, you know, crawled out of a robot, you know, rhino's butt, which is one of the great comic scenes of all time because of his delivery. I just would love to see something like that again, some, you know, level of inspiration if along with Jim Carrey coming back. Obviously, they don't need to do a repeat of Dumb and Dumber 2. That movie was depressing, but you know, something respectful. But obviously, he's not going to, and they're gonna repeat the same like mistake that they made in I didn't see it, but I've seen scenes from it, and the guy that they cast as young Lloyd Christmas in Dumb and Dumberer, they're going to repeat that here because you got to have a character with the same appearance. You know, the cowlick, all of that. But then you're not going to have anybody who's able to set Jim Carrey aside from the character because he put so much of his persona into that role that it's just going to feel like somebody impersonating Jim Carrey. It's not going to feel like themselves. It's just very weird. And I'm sure that, like, out of morbid curiosity, I'm going to check it out, honestly, just to see what they've done. But I do not have high hopes. So I think is that the last bit of news? I think that's the last bit of news.
That is.
That is the last one. So we are going to move on to our trailers for the week, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce the first one. So several weeks ago, we talked about the first trailer for this, and I was not convinced by it. I found that it was pretty underwhelming. Although I guess more that I found it whelming because it came from the director of Suicide Squad and Max Landis behind the screenplay. And now a new trailer has come out, and I gotta say, I'm sold on Bright, which is the Netflix original film with Will Smith and Joel Edgerton. There was somebody who kind of gave an apt... Oh, I know what it was. It was the official Netflix Facebook page. When they posted this trailer, their little caption with the link was that it was Bad Boys in Mordor. And it just seems so apt because we get a sense here. Yeah, the first trailer kind of tried to sell it as this sincere, drama almost. I didn't get a sense with the first trailer that it was a comedy, but here it's clear that they're having fun with it. That this is going to be sort of the Will Smith and Martin Lawrence kind of pairing. It's going to be super profane, cheerfully profane, if you will. It'll be a lot of action, really, violent stuff, but set in a fantasy world where he's paired up with an orc played by Joel Edgerton, and they have to fight off, magical demons and spirits and fairies that are evil and all of that. It just looks fun. It's not a particularly different trailer. I don't like covering second trailers. This week's a bit different. But generally speaking, this was a slightly different trailer in that it sold me better because it was I think a more accurate representation of its tone, and I'm totally sold by that tone. I want a goofy, fun comedy about a couple of cops that happens to be also a fantasy world that they're trying to protect, and all of this stuff. It just looks so fun. It looks more colorful than I remember the first trailer being. The visual effects kind of look iffy, but whatever. And it looks like it has the same some of the same visual style as Suicide Squad, which I didn't really like. But nevertheless, it looks a little more colorful, more fun, and I'm sold. I'm sold as a result of this trailer. So I'm curious to hear what Chase thinks, because I don't know what he thinks about any of the trailers except for one of them. So, Chase, what did you think of this trailer?
So, just like with you, I didn't really care for the first trailer. You're right. It kind of made it, it's like, oh, please feel sorry for orcs in this world with humans. It's just, yes, please feel for us. We're so segregated. No! Like, this should be like a fun fantasy action film. And believe it or not, I'm on Joel's side. I actually like the second trailer because they brought out more of that R-rated kind of like humor, and just overall faster pace with the action and the scenes. It was so much better cut in this way. And they might be lame jokes, but I don't know what it was. It might be just because Will Smith is charismatic AF, but that one line in the trailer, it got me. When he looks up at the orc and he's like, "Take your fat Shrek-looking ass back to Fiona." I don't know why. I cracked up. And just some of the line delivery from Will Smith was just absolutely hilarious. And what's even better is when he delivers the lines in a sarcastic tone. Joel Edgerton's orc delivers it in such like a good-hearted, like serious nature, and it's so that kind of contrast between people is just it's gonna be fun, and I can't wait. And it actually does look really good. The action looked really great. The only negative I have, and I know it's because of a marketing move, but please, for the love of God, take Suicide Squad out of David Ayer's resume. When you say from the director of Suicide Squad, that does not entice me to see it. Now, if you want to put Fury in End to Watch, I totally get it. I saw End to Watch, I really liked it, and a lot of people like Fury. So, but take Suicide Squad out. Stop marketing that movie with that man, okay? He needs to branch away from that. So, that's my only negative, but I really did like the second trailer quite a bit, and I can't believe that I'm actually excited for it now. So, you know what? Joel's right. We rarely talk about second trailers, but I think in this case, it was edited so differently that we kind of had to, because we were both turned off from the first one, and now the second trailer totally won us over. A trailer that did not win me over, because it still fascinates me, and I can't for the life of me think why he still does these movies. But when I saw Taken back in the day, when Joel and I were, I believe, in high school, it's like, that was fun. It was a nice little fun action film to see being played by one of the guys that was in Schindler's List, for Christ's sake. So you're like, okay, he did an action movie, got out of his system. And now Liam Neeson is pretty much synonymous with action films. I've never seen anything beyond the Taken movie. Yeah, I'm actually going to admit that right now. I never saw Taken 2, never saw Taken 3, never saw Nonstop, Run All Night, or whatever the hell that one was called. I've actually never seen anything beyond Taken movies, but just seeing these trailers are so exhausting, because I'm just like, why? Why do you keep making these movies? Like, you've got the chops, kid. Even though I didn't really care for Mark Felt, Liam Neeson is still commanding on screen in dramatic roles. I like when he does stuff like that, but The Commuter. You know what was really funny about Jigsaw? I had never seen this lineup in my life. So you figure with Jigsaw, right, the trailers are going to be like goofy horror films, or, just movies that look terrible, right? Believe it or not, The Commuter was the only bad one out of the mix. Because this is just a little side story. One of the trailers was The Square. The Square played in front of Jigsaw. The movie's got subtitles. I bet it was turning so many people off. They're like, what kind of movie did I walk myself into? It also played another indie film, and I was like, what kind of lineup is this? But then they ended with The Commuter, and then I was like, oh, Lionsgate, why? But The Commuter, to set it up, Liam Neeson's on a train. Vera Farmiga, who's going to be my future wife, she sits down and she's like, all right, there's something on the train, make a decision or we're going to kill people. Okay, fam. And then she walks away, and then the movie starts, or the trailer starts. It looks dumb. The CGI is questionable at best. There's one shot where a guy jumps from the train onto a car, which obviously looks like they're moving at like 100 miles an hour, or maybe like 100,000 miles an hour, and he lands that jump perfectly, and it looks really goofy and video gamey. Yeah, I'm just not into these movies, Joel. I don't understand why once a dramatic actor did one action film to break away, out of his career a little bit, and then to continue doing these, is just now the once great Liam Neeson, who was great in dramas, is now synonymous with terrible action films. So I didn't really care for it at all. So Joel, what do you think of The Commuter?
Well, the only solace I can have is that I didn't like the trailer for Nonstop at all, and that movie kind of rocked. So if you haven't seen that, then see that one. But you don't need to see the Taken sequels. They're both really bad. Unknown is even worse.
Oh yeah, no. Unknown is unbearable. And it's also got. I like her in The Last Man on Earth, but I've never been a January Jones fan, and she's a part of the headlining cast in that movie, and it just makes it even worse.
yeah, it's bad. And this, first of all, they seem to give away like everything.
Oh, I know. There's gonna be no surprises now.
Yeah, I mean, unless this is a Prisoners situation, then they've given away everything. Because Prisoners was one of the most, in hindsight at least, was one of the most brilliant trailers of all time. But not in the moment. So I guess there is that chance. But the CGI looks awful. The CGI looks like it's PS2 level. It looks so bad on a visual level. All, like you said, the shot of the jumping from the train, the explosions. Fire effects are hard to get right. I get it. Just try better than this, unless it's unfinished, I guess. But nevertheless, it's a bad trailer. It's not quite my least favorite trailer, though. So I guess I'll go ahead and introduce this one. And honestly,
and I just want to say one thing real fast. I never saw Nonstop, But I have seen The Shallows, the director's previous film. I like The Shallows. I think it's a pretty interesting little shark movie, and it's got a very depressing, I believe, if you interpret it properly, a very depressing ending, kind of like how 47 Meters Down was. So, and that had some interesting cinematography. So I'm not saying that, like, the director's bad from what I've seen, but, like, this trailer just, it makes, his previous work, which was a pretty decent little shark movie, now he's retracting back to
loud, bombastic action with Liam Neeson. It's like Scott Mendelson from Forbes put it pretty well. It's basically become the point where Liam Neeson was once a dramatic actor who did the occasional action movie, and now he's an action star who makes the occasional drama. And that's so true. I wish, I'm glad that he's kind of found this niche, but he seems to have lost all excitement about this. Taken 3 was depressing to watch.
Now, I will say that I've always felt bad for Liam Neeson, like, for a long time, and it's not because he's in terrible movies. It's actually because the guy was so in love with his wife. She was the mother in the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap. He lost her a good while ago, and the guy just went through, like, this really, like, depressing stage in his life where he would literally sign on to a lot of movies to take his mind off of it. And so I understand why he's, doing all these, like, movies and stuff. Like, it keeps his mind active because, like, it seemed like he really loved his wife and, he lost her and whatnot. And so I really feel bad for him. So in a way, these movies are very therapeutic for him. But he needs to, like you said, go back and do, better movies.
Yeah. Certainly needs to do that. So our next trailer is, I'm just going to say it, my least favorite. I'm going to admit something. So when all right, I watched this trailer sometime mid last week, and then when Chase sent me the notes, he initially sent sort of unfinished trailer segment notes. So I rebuilt the segment, and I saw again the link for this, and for the life of me, I could not remember watching it. Like, I had watched it just a few days before, so I literally had to go to the page and start the trailer before I realized, oh yeah, I watched this. It's called Den of Thieves, and this one stars as a friend of mine put it, the long-awaited partnering of Gerard Butler and 50 Cent in a story that's essentially like a third-rate Heat ripoff. Basically, there's crooked cops, and 50 Cent is might be one of them. It might be Gerard Butler. They're caught in this kind of drug ring, and whatever. I may be even getting the plot wrong. Honestly, this movie looks so like pedestrian and forgettable. It's a January release, which doesn't surprise me. It comes out the same week as 12 Strong from last week. It's probably going to get swallowed up by that, and I won't be surprised by that fact. It just looks really weak and forgettable, and looks like Gerard Butler's doing his usual shtick. I mean, he seems to just basically give the same performance in every movie, and which was seems here to be exactly the performance that he gave in London Has Fallen, essentially, just in the uniform of a SWAT team member. That's essentially it. And yeah, this looks bad. So Chase, were you as as bored by this as I was?
The year was 2016. I believe it was in February, and I saw a movie to where when I walked out of it, I think I actually said to myself, I am so sick and tired of seeing these basic ass corrupt cop, police, thieves, they're all working together, corruption. Like, I am tired of seeing these movies. It was after 999. When I saw that movie, I was like, I think I'm done with this, like, kind of subgenre. They all look the same to me. Like, we had it earlier this year with Sleepless, the Jamie Foxx movie. It's like, they all look the same. This one is no different. What is so different about it? Like, I just... If you're going to try to do something within this subgenre, please make it different. Just the way it even played out. It exposes everything. You're like, all right, that guy's working for that guy. Gerard Butler's corrupt as hell. He's using his power of being a cop to influence thieves. And it's like, okay, where's the hook? There's no hook to this. It's just the same BS over and over again. And I just, whatever. I really don't care. When I was watching the trailer, I felt really bad for Gerard Butler because I'm like, listen, this guy is on the verge of being outcasted from movies. When he's in flop after flop after flop after terrible movie after terrible movie, you've only got so many chances. I firmly believe if 300 was not a success or a hit in any way, Gerard Butler would never be in this position. And I think he just fell into that like, oh, he was in one... popular, okay movie at best. I'm not saying 300 is terrible, but it's not my favorite Zack Snyder film by a long shot. It is what it is. I think it's a pretty decent, graphic novel adaptation, but if he was not in that movie, he would never have a career. Because every single choice he's made, excluding maybe a couple movies, they've all been pretty rough just to watch. And it's like he's just going down this sinkhole that he really can't get out of at this point. I mean... one of the things I found out this week is that Geostorm's about to lose $100 million. I'm not saying it's Gerard Butler's fault, but like he just keeps attaching himself to these terrible movies that are losing a lot of money. He doesn't pull in people anymore. I want to see this guy bounce back and do something different. I want to see him do a horror film, a sci-fi film, anything that's not a stupid rom-com or a stupid action film. Just stop. You need to take a breather, do something, like take a vacation, come back and do something different because these movies are not helping you. You're right, he's giving the same performance. There's nothing edgy about it. It's just like, I'm corrupt. Don't mess with the law, son. And it's like, okay, thanks, fam. Like, I don't care, Joel. The trailer
it's probably one of those trailers that it gives away everything except for maybe like one really lame twist. And those seem to happen all the time.
Oh, I can't wait for it. You're gonna watch the movie, and 50 Cent's gonna be sitting across from Gerard Butler, and Gerard Butler with a straight face is gonna be like, "I'm your father," or "I'm your brother," and then like it's gonna do this stupid dolly in to Curtis Jackson's face, and he's gonna be like, "Oh my god!" Like it's gonna be stupid.
Or they're gonna just like repeat the De Niro Pacino scene in Heat. They're just gonna recite the dialogue.
Whatever. That movie can go to the wayside and attract those January crowds because apparently it did so well for Sleepless earlier this year that they had to have another one just pump out of Hollywood's anus. All right, so the next trailer, which is really funny because I believe Joel and I have the best audience around. We have the best listeners. I'm also a firm belief that Joel and I, this person will not stand up and speak, but Joel and I have a Hollywood insider. We have someone working in the system because on last Sunday show, we were describing the plot synopsis for Phantom Thread. Literally the next day, I'm like, Joel, I cannot believe the trailer to this movie dropped. If it would have dropped a little earlier, we could have talked about it, but no, they have to do it literally a day after, so we have to push it literally 6 days until we can talk about it. It's just, someone's listening. Someone from Hollywood loves our show. We thank you. And they're telling someone to release stuff to just piss Joel and I off, so whoever you are, stop it. Please give us some inside information and not do this, magician bullshit that you're doing. So, anyways, the Phantom Thread trailer dropped literally the next day after last week's episode. This is the new Paul Thomas Anderson film, which Dirty Emoji Money is going to fuel the distribution of this movie. So there you go. There's your nightmare for the week. It also stars Daniel Day-Lewis in his supposedly last role ever. He's going to retire from acting. And from the plot synopsis that we gave last week, he plays a fashion designer. A woman comes into his life. and love ensues. It's basically a period piece romance. Now, when the trailer dropped, I was excited for it. Joel was excited for it. We were like, man, I can't wait to check out the first glimpses of it. We got it, and we watched it. And I was actually kind of shocked that when I went online, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, wherever, a lot of people didn't really care for it. They were like, it was fine. And I think that had to do with people's expectations of thinking it's going to be another There Will Be Blood collaboration, when in reality, it's going to be the exact opposite. Are we going to get a Daniel Day-Lewis outburst? Maybe. But for the most part, this is a quiet trailer. The movie starts out with some really great orchestral music, and underneath it, and the production design, the costumes look elegant and colorful. The cinematography just looks really quaint, and the tone of it was just very quiet and somber, and it's exactly what I said before. It's a period piece romance, and Paul Thomas Anderson is directing it. He wrote it. Daniel Day-Lewis is the star. And I like the trailer. It's different. I want to see different. I don't want to see the same There Will Be Blood, because guess what? We already got it. It was called There Will Be Blood. I don't need to see that again. I want to see them do something different. That's the cool thing with PTA. He's always doing something different. Boogie Nights is a really kind of retro porn film. Punch Drunk Love is a romantic comedy. There Will Be Blood is his horror film. The Master is I would actually consider it it almost plays out like a weird sci-fi fantasy almost. Inherent Vice, another romance film. The guy's always doing something different, to where that's what I want to see from him. And this is what we get. And that's cool. I can't wait to see Daniel Day-Lewis's supposedly last role. Why he wanted to take this on and do something kind of different, be a fashion designer. So I'm all for it. I like the trailer. It's quiet. It could be very romantic. Could probably make you cry a little bit, make you laugh. I'm just excited to see it in general, and the fact that we got our first glimpse of it just makes me excited. So, Joel, we already discussed this, so go ahead and gush about the trailer as well.
Yeah, it's neat that you mention the different sort of modes of Paul Thomas Anderson, because with Boogie Nights, that was sort of his Scorsese movie. With Magnolia and Inherent Vice, I think are sort of two different coins of a Robert Altman kind of homage. Where one's the ensemble film, the other one's kind of the loopy, romance-driven mystery movie. Punch Drunk Love is his romantic comedy, with Adam Sandler. It's his Wedding Singer. And then, There Will Be Blood, I would argue, is his Kubrick movie, kind of a bit impenetrable, all that. The Master is his own thing. I don't think that's like any other director. But, now you have this movie, which I think is sort of his Merchant Ivory romance. Merchant Ivory did the stuff like Howard's End and The Remains of the Day, quiet movies set in the UK, primarily, Britain or Scotland.
It's like something. I told you on Monday, this trailer almost looks like a Jane Austen novel. It plays out like one of those movies, like a Pride and Prejudice or whatever.
And it's very interesting to hear that it's apparently sort of an art house 50 Shades of Grey in its plot, not in its treatment, but in the plot, it's very much about a romance with those kinds of power dynamics. But it's obviously going to be quieter. I think that you're right. The movie's going to reflect the cinematography here, which is very, like you said, it's quaint, it's quiet, it's gorgeous for sure, but it's not one of those loudly gorgeous things. It's gorgeous in quieter ways. It's sort of reminds of some of the work that what was it seems sort of like Jane Eyre, the recent Jane Eyre, the one from 2011. It kind of gives off that vibe, or Far from the Madding Crowd, or whatever. These period dramas. It has that feel. Daniel Day-Lewis looks really strong. It looks like him in the Age of Innocence mode. Again, to repeat myself, I've said this several times on the podcast, but everybody, please seek out The Age of Innocence. It's one of his best performances, and I'm excited to see what he does. For his last role, it looks like, first of all, it looks like he's using his actual accent, which was unexpected because his accent. He's a very as loud as his roles can be sometimes, he's very soft-spoken, very poetic, and that's how he speaks here. Barely raises his voice. When he raises his voice, it's like he's not really raising his voice. And yeah, I mean, it looks every bit like my thing. It's my favorite trailer of the week. I can just say that. I like the next one as well, but this is my favorite trailer of the week. So I'm so excited. It's probably going to be something we have to see in January if they don't send a screener or invite or something. But I can't wait for whenever I do see it. So I'm excited. All right, so our last trailer is sort of topical to this week because it comes from the directors of the movie that Chase is reviewing. It's called Winchester, the House That Ghosts Built. I gotta say, so this one really interested me. So it's got Helen Mirren, and it's sort of based on this legend, sort of Amityville type legend of the most haunted establishment ever. And we get to see some glimpses of Jason Clarke, who comes to, I guess, investigate the house or talk about the house to people. I'm not sure what his job is, but he's explaining it in the trailer. And we get some ooky spooky kind of glimpses at some of the supernatural elements. He's an atheist. He doesn't believe in this stuff. He only believes in what he can see. So it just looks interesting. It looks fun, and kind of just like your usual February horror release. Nothing special about it, but it looks fun to me. And it looks like Helen Mirren will nicely chew up the scenery. I suspect that this is going to be one of those things where she gets top billing, but she's actually a supporting character because it seems like it follows the Jason Clarke character. But nevertheless, I think this looks pretty fun. So, especially from the directors of something like Predestination. So yeah, I'm excited to see this. I know Chase is a fan of them. So Chase, are you excited to see this?
I am actually. It was like a crossbreed of Crimson Peak, the Del Toro film, and the others. And I was like,
it has major vibes of both.
Yeah,
it has major vibes of both, and I love those movies. So if this can be even like close to that good, I'll be happy with that.
Yeah,
sure.
It was surprising. The only thing I don't like about it, and this is just like an editing thing. I don't mind actors' names being in the trailer, but for some weird reason, it was very awkwardly inserted with Helen Mirren and Jason Clarke's name cards. They did like slow fade in and fade outs, and I don't know, it just didn't really fit with the scenes that they were setting up because there was no sound design, no music, and they felt like awkward edits. But other than that, I was really into the story. I like Helen Mirren being in a horror film. That's kind of cool. It's different. And the Spirit Brothers, and I'm going to get to that in my Jigsaw review, they are the masters at literally the last 5 minutes of their movies where they'll have like some epic twist that just like blows your mind. And they're really good at that. So I'm guessing, since they are spearheading this, that it'll have some type of twist that they're going to do. Like, it's going to be something unexpected, because we're going to be going in there expecting a haunted house film, which is one of my favorite subgenres. I'm always a sucker for those movies, but they're going to throw something different at us, and I can't wait to see what they do, because I am a fan of Daybreakers. That Predestination ending, it still blows my mind every single time. And the Jigsaw movie, with the way Saw sets up like their endings and whatnot, the Spirit Brothers totally took that and ran with it and made their own. So I've always enjoyed their movies, so I'm curious to see what they do with a haunted house film now.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of, especially with something like this where it's the most haunted, and we see a list, kind of the movie rifles through a list, or the trailer rifles through a list of the kinds of specters they'll encounter, and there's a lot of potential there for sure. And so I hope that they don't just use it as like an exercise to. I'm really excited, for sure. So that's our trailers for the week. Let us know your favorite one. Mine was Phantom Thread. Chase's yours, Phantom Thread?
Well, yeah. when you're competing with The Commuter and Den of Thieves, it's kind of easy to pick the best one.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, easily Den of Thieves is my least favorite.
But I will say that Winchester was a close second. I really was kind of surprised.
Yeah, I'm sort of, it's like Phantom Thread is above the others, and then I'm pretty equally excited for Bright and Winchester, and then The Commuter and Den of Thieves can just go jump off a cliff with their friends and then die.
With the other group of terrible movies.
With the other group of terrible movies. Yeah, so those are our trailers. Let us know what your favorite is in the comments below our voices. And we're going to move on to the reviews now. And we've got 3 on the way. 2 from me, or I guess 1.5 from me, and then 1.5 from Chase. And the first one is going to be our joint review. This is The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I'm going to go ahead and introduce this and sort of give my initial thoughts, and then I'll hand it over to Chase. So, The Killing of a Sacred Deer is kind of hard to summarize, but generally speaking, this is a movie about a doctor named Stephen Murphy, played by Colin Farrell, and the premise of the movie's hard to talk about without giving away some stuff, but there are 2 relationships that are central to this movie. One is between Stephen and his family. It's kind of an odd one because it's very open in terms of its behavior, but his wife is played by Nicole Kidman, and his kids are played by Raffi Cassidy and Sonny Suljic or something. I don't know. I probably murdered that. Suljic. And they're a very open family because they exist in a Yorgos Lanthimos movie. That is obviously the case. And the other relationship, which eventually affects the other relationship in very profound ways, is with the 16-year-old boy named Martin, played by Barry Kagan, who is a kid. He's the son of a former patient of Stephen's who died on the table, and this relationship seems like one thing. It seems sort of like he's this possessive kind of stalker type. And that's all I'm going to reveal, because nothing happens the way you think it's going to happen. Even like the possibilities of stuff that you think might happen don't happen. This is a very twisted movie. It's perfect for the Halloween weekend in that Kubrick kind of way. I want to applaud Chase for giving that comparison in his review, because it's very apt. And yeah, so Chase, I'm going to hand it over to you for the positives.
Well, just
and your initial thoughts.
Yeah. No, I just let's just jump into it with no expectation. No, I of course, guys, I've said this like a million times, and I'm gonna keep saying it because I want them to eventually adopt me and Joel as children. With A24, please adopt us. Until they do, I'm gonna keep praising them, because every single time they distribute a movie, make a movie, whatever, they slap their logo on there, I'm always excited. Even if the movie's terrible, I still give them props for trying something. I'm not, a fanboy that's just, completely blind to them. I do hate some of their movies, like with a Venom. So, I go into it expecting greatness most of the time, but when I'm walked out disappointed, I'm like, it is what it is. They have 2 other movies coming out next week, so we'll give it another shot. But, yeah, I was excited for it for the A24 factor. Excited for it because when we reviewed that first trailer, it knocked it out of the park. Using the Joel, who was the
Ellie Goulding, the girl in the movie is singing "Burn" by Ellie Goulding, and it's really haunting.
It's a haunting trailer to use that as the kind of like betting for the trailer. And 3 is Yorgos Lanthimos. I did see The Lobster at Fantastic Fest in 2015. It was the first film I saw at the festival, and I liked it for the most part. But I think what was even better about the movie was having Yorgos in front of me on the red carpet, just talking about The Lobster. And I was like, this guy is just fascinating to talk to, because his mind is so different in how he views movies and how he creates stories. Like, because people automatically asked him, they're like, So how'd you come up with the idea of the lobster, which any sane human being would also come up with because it's a very unique story. And the same applies for this one, where Joel and I, when we watched the trailer, we knew what we were getting ourselves into. It was going to be something different, something kind of unsettling and kind of haunting, and it completely delivers. I mean, even with like my negatives, like the positives are so well done, and they take so many risks in terms of, just cinematography and music and acting that, you have to applaud it on a technical level. It's pretty great. It's really weird when I get to my grade, Joel, because like my grade's not going to be as high as the way I'm going to talk about it, but it's still, I believe, if I rearranged it today, it's still in my top 10 so far, because I actually do think as an experience, it's absolutely incredible. It's one of those, like, in a good way, it's one of those like ear-piercing films and like visually like stunning films to where like you're kind of like in this horrific trance the entire time, and you really don't know what to make what you're watching. So I'm excited to jump into this. So you want to start? Let's jump into the positives. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, you literally have to take it, beat by beat. So I'm gonna start, with the directing, because I think what Yorthos does is really kind of create this unique vision on what paranoia is, because that's what this movie is. It, like, on its surface level, it's a very basic story, and to be quite frank with you, that does kind of apply to my negatives, that if you didn't have this talent behind it, this movie would have been dull and average. But what he does is he elevates it into this kind of like horrific kind of, subtly frightening movie where he does apply a lot of paranoia and apply a lot of kind of ear-piercing music and sound design, to where the experience watching this is just, like I said, it really just puts you in this trance, and it's so different from any horror film that you're going to see this year, because he looks at it through the lens of like a Kubrick film and really draws out shots and really draws out the scenes and the acting, and just really makes you feel uncomfortable as much as possible. But that's the whole point of the movie. Another positive for me is the cinematography. It's absolutely genius. I mean, there's a lot of Kubrick touches where you're following characters down hallways, and you got these long dolly shots, and they're just mesmerizing to look at. Also, someone else on YouTube pointed this out, another reviewer, but the camera placement and how it would kind of like be on top of the screen and have the characters at the bottom. Another reviewer put this perfectly, so I'm not going to take credit for this, but when he brought this up, I was like, that's exactly what I was thinking about. I couldn't construct it in my mind and word it out, but the way the camera is kind of like on top of these characters, it's almost like this whole movie and this whole idea that the plot is insinuating is looming over these characters, and there's really no way to stop it. It's always going to keep plaguing them. I thought that was just a great point that I totally agree with. The music, once again, is just absolutely divine. It's mesmerizing in an auditory sense. It starts out with just music and a black screen, and it carries throughout the movie and just really just adds that extra layer of uncomfortability that I really liked. And the sound design, oh my god. There's a couple parts in the movie where like the sound design is so amped up. I think I got like goosebumps in one scene, and like I kind of winced. Joel knows what I'm talking about. It's at the very end, and it's like, oh god, like it makes your whole thing just chill your soul to the core. It's amazing. The acting is also really well done. It's offbeat. It's kind of different. It's not, these people don't play like straight-laced people, they're almost like in this weird alternative universe, but it totally fits because this whole movie feels like an alternative universe. But like I said, they're kind of offbeat, kind of off-kilter type of performances, but they're really well done in how they deliver the subtlety and this kind of like madness, and some of the dramatic elements are actually really great, because it's really funny that you'll have one scene where it's so intense and the intensity is off the charts and you can't look away, but then you'll have like quieter scenes where they play that song where she sings it to to Barry's character, Martin, and it was kind of beautiful. It was poetic, and it's like the acting is definitely some of the best I've seen all year, and Joel knows this, and this is one of those like things where it's hard to get right in a movie is child acting. My favorite child performances this year that I've seen, one is X-23 and Logan. Two is the little girl from Florida Project. Three, since I just got done watching it, is Noah Schnapp from Stranger Things. He was totally off-kiltered in the first season, and now he's the best part in the second season. And four is Barry's character Martin. Like, it is some of the most unsettling facial acting you will ever see. The kid has like this natural face to where if he just stares at you, he pierces your soul. Like, he doesn't have to do anything. And like that's how great this kid is. And before Joel and I saw the movie, I was like, I can't believe this is the same kind of like goody two shoes kid from Dunkirk. Like, it's so weird to see him in this type of like Ezra Miller from We Need to Talk About Kevin type of role, where he's just super creepy and unnerving, but like he thinks that like he's normal, and like technically he doesn't really do anything wrong, and like that's why it's so great, because he instills that paranoia into like Colin Farrell and whatnot, and that just shows you how powerful he is with just his eyes and his facial movements. So yeah, believe it or not, those are all my positives. I guess one last thing, because it does kind of flow into the negatives a little bit, but I do think it's a well-paced movie. It definitely commands your attention the entire time. I was just fascinated just by the curiosity of where the story was going to go. But I do think that kind of bleeds into the negatives a little bit. But, that's the negatives. Very minimal with me. Joel, positives, man. Like, what do you got?
Pretty much the same ones as you. I think that as a visual and auditory experience, it's pretty like it's undeniable. I mean, the cinematography is really rich, and I love how the cinematographer Themios Bakatakis, one of my favorite names of all time, he does a lot of tracking shots like backwards, and he also constantly pulls out from whatever he's looking at. Very rarely does he ever pull into a character. He's usually pulling out. And that opening scene, I wrote so much about it in my review, but it was really striking in that it kind of summed up the movie, where we get this close up of an open heart surgery, and then this sort of banal conversation about watches, and it's just Lanthimos makes movies in closed worlds, and so you're totally right about the performances. Because these are characters who sort of exist in their own universe. And so you have the family kind of interacts with each other in a more open way than, you might be used to with a family, and then the kid, Martin, is incredibly open to the point of being creepy. And the actors all play it really well. They have this kind of formal speech. The inflection is very mannered in a way that it seems like it's constant performance art rather than an actual conversation. And the actors are all able to play that really well, especially the kids. And you're right. I mean, all of them really, not just Barry Kagan, but the Raffi Cassidy and the other kid, I'm not going to try to say his name again, are all really attuned to this kind of feel of this off-kilter world, and it's fascinating. So to get back to and that's the performances I've given that. I think Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman are really good. Alicia Silverstone has a fun little performance or appearance, I should say, in one scene. And I think the performances are all strong. The main thing here, though, is the style. The music is haunting and scary. Sometimes really like loud and intentionally obnoxious, but in a way that's that goes with the rest of it. And I've already talked about the cinematography. It's really rich and It's certainly not vibrant because it's a lot of the same colors, but they use those colors really well. And just the editing. You mentioned the editing in your review, that it's so well paced that and it's just like the cuts between scenes are so like precise. It's like this perfectly preserved like specimen on a table or something, I guess, in a way. And if you think about cutting, and it's just really, really well put together movie. And that's kind of what ultimately it comes down to me. My grade is going to reflect that. I will say that the positives outweigh the negatives that I have, but I do have some. So I'm going to let you get to yours first. And I think that, again, they're going to be the same thing. But go ahead.
Yeah. For the negatives, it's really minimal. And honestly, one of the negatives is why I can't really get into the A category, because I do think it kind of brings the movie down quite a bit. But the first one, while on one side of the coin, I believe that the editing is very precise and just it's so on point, and it's very just direct. There's no scenes that aren't supposed to be there. It feels like a very like just perfectly edited movie into what Yorthos was trying to deliver. On the same coin, I will also say that it is a very slow movie, and there are a couple scenes where the edit was fine, but like I wish they would have just kind of, moved a little quicker in either line delivery or just I don't know how to describe it. It's a very slow movie that I do think is actually edited very well, but you can feel the weight a little bit because it is a 2-hour movie, and that might turn some people off. I was more fascinated with the kind of world that Yorthos kind of created and the cinematography and the music, to where it didn't really bother me too much. It's just something I have to address. Like I said, it is a bare minimum movie. It's only elevated pretty much from everything besides the script. So it's one of those things to where if the direction was not as hauntingly nightmarish as it was, if the cinematography wasn't gorgeous, the music, sound, everything, this would be a boring movie. But I was so fascinated on a technical level that it didn't really bother me. But I will address that the overall feeling of the movie, while slow at sometimes, I think is edited fine. But I'm letting you guys know that, because don't be expecting like this loud, jump scary movie. It's a very kind of like it lets it seep into your soul a little bit, and that's why the ending kind of sequence, it kind of permeates a little bit more, just because I felt so invested from everything I was watching, to where it was really satisfying and kind of disturbing on how the movie ended. So yeah, that, and then the second thing. Before we saw this movie, I was looking up reviews online saying that this is a really great dark comedy. I'm going to be the only one that disagrees with that. I didn't like the dark comedy aspects at all. And the more I thought about it, the more I came to the conclusion that they should have just kept this as a straight-laced, suspenseful thriller and not have any of those weird dark comedy elements. I know it's going to contradict what I just said on how these characters don't act like real characters. They act like they're in this weird alternate universe, so they're going to have offbeat humor. I get that. But there are a couple scenes where I didn't feel like the comedy worked, and it kind of sucked out all the tension that I was kind of building up in that scene. It didn't really mesh well. So I actually think if you would have kept this as a straight, suspenseful thriller, it would have been fine, because when I saw The Lobster, that movie kind of had a dark comedic tone throughout. It wasn't like in spurts. It was dark comedy throughout. And at the very end, it kind of had like a poignant kind of life, a life moment where, it's just really depressing that these characters have come to this conclusion type of deal. That's fine. But it had a dark comedic tone. I just feel like in this one, the dark comedy shouldn't have been there. And I do think the bits and pieces that we saw in that light were kind of off-putting and really kind of took me out of the moment. I'm probably the only one that thinks this. That's fine. But after sitting on it for a few days, I do think that those moments take the movie down quite a bit. So yeah, that's honestly it for the negatives. I don't have much just because the whole experience of the movie is just so well done. So, Joel, what about you? What are some of the things that just didn't really work for you?
I mean, you're kind of right. The plot's kind of just a bag of tricks, really. By the end, it becomes frustrating because it all becomes about sort of constantly upending our expectations in a way that eventually gets a little tired. I'm not, you're never really quite sure what Martin's role is in on this, especially and even by the end. It's very confused and conflicted, and by the end, I think it does drop the whole dark comedy aspect. I didn't mind that as much as you. I think it's sort of something with Lanthimos movies that, he's sort of a nihilistic Wes Anderson kind of. He's working in that area of like extremely precise, symmetrical filmmaking of messy ideas that are in these closed worlds. And on that note, I felt like it worked about as well as Dogtooth and the Lobster. Dogtooth was certainly the darkest movie. It's the one where he had the most creative freedom, I would say, to kind of let loose. And it's probably the best of those three. But all of them had this same problem, which is that the plot's just a bag of tricks, sort of a pillowcase of tricks, if you will. It's just kind of a thinly veiled kind of ploy to get to an ending that's really nihilistic, that's really kind of making the whole point is to shock you, essentially. Here, it's sort of cut with a bit of irony that I liked. I think that Lanthimos works in irony really well, but the plot's just kind of ultimately a big bag of nothing, and that does hinder my grade a little bit as well. Like you, I don't think I'm quite as high on this as you, because I know your grade already, but and mine's not quite that high, but it's a good movie because of the style that Lanthimos brings to it. So those are my final thoughts. I'm just going to go ahead and give my grade because my grade's a B-. I think that the experience sort of ultimately outweighs the specifics, if you will, the specifics of the plot and how it plays out. But the performances, the style, all of that really works. So my ultimate grade for The Killing of a Sacred Deer is a B-.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really need to recap everything I just said. I mean, besides those couple little things, I do think it's a horrific movie in the sense of it's going to be something different. You're never going to see it coming. It's just, it's going to be not like...
And that's another thing. It's the experience is undeniable. Like, you won't be able to forget this for a while.
No.
And I think that that's valuable right now because we see a lot of cookie cutter movies that, play out exactly how you think they're going to. This one doesn't in any way. Even the thoughts that you start to compile about this unpredictable movie, moving unpredictably, all the stuff you think might happen on like some plane do not.
And that's the joy of this movie is that, yeah, the plot might be thin, the story might be thin, but he does elevate it into such a way to where it doesn't, the experience is one of those kind of overpowering things to where if this was just made on a basic level, it'd be boring and I'd probably go in the C range, but because it's so well done technically, I gotta land on a B+. I think it's a very solid movie, but I'm gonna kind of uptick it just a half a step just because I do think that Joel's right. That is something that does affect my grade. Is what did it impact me as I was walking out? Have I thought about it? And I have. And there's a lot of techniques just as a filmmaker that I was just astonished by. I was like, man, I wish I could do some of that stuff. So, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, we're in the B range, so we do think it's a solid film. So if you want something different for Halloween, we suggest you check this one out. And A24 can do no wrong most of the time. So, all right, so let's jump into the mini review of Suburbicon with Joseph over there. I did not see this one. However, directed by George Clooney, co-written with, Coen brothers, Matt Damon, Julianne Moore, Oscar. You figure with that group, nothing could go wrong. But when we get into the box office results, it could quite possibly be the most shocking one I've seen all year. And I won't tell you if it's good or bad. So, Joel, Suburbicon, are you going to convince us to see it or tell us to stay away from it like the plague?
It's barely worth a rental. So this one, yes, comes from director George Clooney. And I don't usually do this, but I'm going to note this, that he also co-wrote the screenplay with Grant Heslov, which is, this is his usual writing partner when he does this stuff. But they're credited separately as their own sort of George Clooney ampersand Grant Heslov with Ethan and Joel Coen. And I'm going to get into why that's a very interesting thing here in a few minutes. So the plot, before I get to the plot, I'm going to say that I'm going to conceal part of this plot from you guys until somewhere near the end of the review. And the reason is twofold. One, the marketing does that. And two, it's very interesting because the part of the plot that I'm going to conceal is directly tied to some point about the movie, whether it be a positive point or a negative point. In this case, it's a negative point. So that's why I'm concealing that. Whereas the main thrust of the plot, the thing that the trailer shows us, isn't really connected to that. So I feel more comfortable bringing up that part of the plot right now. But the main thrust of the plot follows Matt Damon, who wakes up his kid and his wife and her sister as strange men enter their home. And basically they've just made a demand to sit still while they have their bit of fun. The whole experience does not go well. His son is played by Noah Jupe, and his wife and her sister are both played by Julianne Moore in a dual role that becomes a singular role after a while. And so what results from this is this sort of like insurance scheme plot that feels very much like an early different draft of the screenplay was written by the Coen brothers, and that's why they have their own credit. So I'm going to get into the positives because it's semi-related to this. There's relatively few. The main one is that I think Matt Damon is quite good. He's able to sort of fence this line between absurd and grave that's really interesting. It's very Coen brothers. And, it's this idea of a dark comedy, but that's played as, somewhat sincere in parts. And it's also pretty funny. There's some stuff in here that has potential. There's an appearance by a claims investigator played by Oscar Isaac that's really a lot of fun. He gives this performance that is basically a character that has walked out of one of the great Coen brothers movies and is kind of stuck in this scene that pair of scenes where he shows up and then, he exits the movie in this really dramatic fashion, and it's a great appearance and it's a really good performance. So those two things are great. I think that the cinematography is pretty good. I forgot to look up who shot this, but I think it's really like lantern lit and neat. It's definitely not Roger Deakins, but it feels like it's trying to be Roger Deakins and halfway succeeding. And then the kid Noah Jupe is good in the role. It's a pretty solid little child performance. Not one of the greats or whatever, but it's good. And I think Julianne Moore's solid. She's able to create early on two distinct characters, and she plays some of the later notes as one of those characters. Really like sort of as deceptive. It's interesting. So those are the positives. Time to get into the negatives, and I will just say this is when I bring up the other part of the plot. And Chase, I don't know if you've looked up anything about this movie. Do you know where I'm going with this? Do you know what the other part of this plot is?
No, I literally saw the trailer and that was it.
Okay, so here's the thing, and this is bizarre. The other part of the credit for the writing, I think, can be called responsible for this. But an entire subplot in this movie is about a black family that has moved into this utopia right next door to Matt Damon's house. And so all of this is considered the fault of the boy, of Matt Damon's son, for befriending the black boy next door. And so we get this weird, inexplicable glimpse into racial injustice in the 50s in this neighborhood that's homogeneously white. And it's bizarre because it completely confuses the movie. And that's going to factor into my grade a lot because on one end, we have this murder mystery dark comedy thing where you'd think that the best approach would be to just have this story play out in a clear, decisive manner, no distractions, nothing like that. But eventually, this idea of racial discrimination becomes a backdrop for the story. And so you have this clear-cut story with this distraction right in the middle of it, of this completely innocuous and meaningless element of racial discrimination, which the movie doesn't really do anything with, because, and this is the most bizarre thing, the family's barely given a voice. The father never speaks in the movie. The mother doesn't have a distinctive personality. She's in 2 scenes near the beginning, and that's about it. And the only thing that we really learn about the kid is that he likes collecting bugs. So you have this major point that the movie's trying to make, but not a proper productive vessel in terms of an actual voice for the family in order to bring this across. So then you think, well, okay, so maybe they're just trying to give us a glimpse of racial discrimination. But why do we need that when the focus of the movie is the murder mystery? And so it ends up being 2 sides of a movie, and they don't do each other any favors. And so it has nothing to do with the performances. It has nothing to do with the main thrust of the plot, which is interesting enough. It's all about this weird decision to insert an entire element of trying to explore racial dysfunction that doesn't fit at all. It's this is the year for that, I guess, and so they're trying to capitalize on that, I guess. But they just needed to make it about the murder mystery, or make the murder mystery the backdrop for a story about racial discrimination. Because by the end, without giving anything away, it's essentially the racial dysfunction is the reason that all of this is happening. The reason that there's a murder in this town. The reason that, all of this stuff involving the insurance scheme that goes awry. And it becomes a bit of a misfire in that way. And quite literally. So I'm going to be giving Suburbicon a C-. This is not a very good. It was almost a D+, honestly. It was almost down into that pretty bad range, but it's more mediocre than anything because I think it has the pieces for an interesting movie. It just didn't do anything with them, and it's kind of baffling because George Clooney works with the Coens a lot, and you'd think he'd know about sort of that tone and be able to control it, but it's just totally out of control. So it's a real disappointment, and I'm giving Suburbicon a C-.
Yeah, no, I'm really disappointed to hear that because I've been hearing a lot of people kind of be mixed on it. Now, there's a couple of people on Facebook that Joel and I are friends with that, they seem to like it, so it seems like it's more of a mixed bag than anything, and I'll see it eventually, but when we get to those box office results, I don't think you're prepared for it. I will just say that. You are not prepared. It is going to go down in history as either one of the best opening weekends or one of the worst. And it's, yeah. All right, so getting on to my mini review of Jigsaw, because I know Joel's he's just been wanting me to shut the F up about this, and so, I'm going to keep it brief, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. Like, I love the franchise, but I'm not blind. These are not well-made movies. The sets always look cheap. The acting is mediocre at best. It is basically a long, drawn-out, Criminal Minds, Law and Order type of police procedural. There's really nothing special about them, except for one element, and he is prominent in all 8 of the movies, and that's Tobin Bell, playing Jigsaw. I like, that character's mission. I like the kills. They're creative in that gory, kind of gore-houndish film type of way. I just love the movies. I can't explain them. I just do. But this is the first one I have seen as an active critic that's been doing this since roughly 2011, which was 1 year after the last one in 2010 with Saw 3D, the final chapter. Okay, so I'm going to review this as a straight up, just as a film. Like, I'm going to take the fanboy out of it, but I'm going to tell you my overall roller coaster of emotions watching this. Once it started, I was excited to see another Saw film in theaters. I was excited to see the Twisted Pictures logo, which, on a side note, I like this version of it because I hadn't seen that Twisted Pictures logo in some time since the last Saw. And this is the logo where you'll have Twisted Pictures, you'll have the stake go through or in between the words, and then you'll have the barbed wire around the words, and it tightens up and it creates marks on the wording. And so I found this, I was like, I can't believe they've never done this. When the barbed wire was done and it whips off the words, there was actually like a little blood in the actual cuts of the letters. And I was like, that's pretty cool. That was a nice little upgrade. So nice little editing geek touch that I found. All right, so now the movie. Okay. So when the movie started, I was like, cool, we're getting back into it. I'm curious to see if this is going to be like a prequel, origin story, sequel. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. I'd say like the whole first act and half of the second act, it was fine. It's like, okay, it's whatever. It's another Saw franchise. Cool. There's something that is revealed in the middle of the movie to where it frustrated me because I thought they were going to go down a route of having some cheesy ass explanation of, this is why this has happened. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense when we clearly saw the death of this character. But then, at the end of the movie, like the Spirit Brothers do best, the twist happens in Saw fashion, by the way, which, a character basically explains it to the audience, which is fine. They're cheesy and fun. It's like, type of deal. The ending of the film, I appreciated, and I ended up liking it. So I went through this roller coaster of like, it was fine. Oh, I'm really frustrated for like 10, 15 minutes. And okay, that was kind of clever. I didn't really see that coming. So, and I will explain that because I have to explain why I liked it so much and why I thought the Spirit Brothers brought, a nice little unique touch to it. So if you don't want to know anything about Jigsaw, I'll give you the spoiler warning. But for now, as a film, I'm going to review this as a straight-up critic. The acting is not good, but I will say that it's better than, most of the Saw movies. Like, it's tolerable acting. I never felt like, the characters were in, or like real breathing characters. I just felt like these were actors that they got on the cheap, basically to be as pawns for these gore scenes. So the acting, not anything in particularly good. The story itself is actually pretty interesting when you find out the reveal at the end. So yeah, story's fine. Dialogue is atrocious because it is basically the fuel of the terrible acting, and it just makes the lines sound so much worse than they actually are. However, the story does bring up some interesting ideas of, I've seen these in movies, for the past 5 years. So like this is nothing new, and this is actually, in movies that are playing out in theaters now. what we've seen in the Tragedy Girls. Joel and I did that review. Check that out if you want to go find that. But, that film kind of touched upon how, serial killers were a big thing in like the 70s and 80s and 90s. Now, horror movies nowadays are actually focusing on people that are obsessed with those type of serial killers. Jigsaw actually has that. And I've always found that to be fascinating as to this cult of people that just love serial killers to where they get obsessive and then they want to go recreate traps and all that stuff. So they had that story element there. They just never explored it. And of course it's all about the game and what these people did. So I did like that element. I just wish they would have explored that a little bit more and just kind of made it a little bit more psychological, kind of like what the first one was. Because I will admit, as a fan, the first one, it was new, it was fresh in the horror genre, but it was more of a psychological horror about two people kind of going through this very violent therapy about what they've done in their lives wrong. Now, yes, they've had that throughout all 7, but they've gotten so cheapened to where it's just mainly about the gore. But they introduced this element to it, and I thought they were going to go there, but they never really do anything with it. On a directing level, Spirit Brothers, regardless of what you think of their movies, they're entertaining as hell. I was never bored throughout the hour and a half. I was just so invested. I was just like, man, what kind of crazy traps they going to do? How is this going to tie in with everything else? So I was, as a gore film, entertained out the wazoo, and I'll even explain the last kill when I get in the spoiler section because it's pretty outrageous and gory. It's actually one of the goriest things I've seen in the whole franchise. So yeah, the overall pace of it was entertaining. It's it gets you in the Halloween spirit. Nothing wrong with that. And like I said before, I don't know what it is about Saw 4, 5, 6, 7, and now this one, but the sets always look so cheap. It always looks like they film in a studio somewhere. And I never feel like they're palpable locations. Because the great thing about the first one is that bathroom looked dirty. It looked gross. It looked rusty. And so when these characters woke up in it, I felt like they were in this underground basement where this, killer is basically harboring them. I don't know what it is, like I said, after that shift after the third one, but it always looks so cheap now, and it's like Lionsgate. These films are already cheap enough as is. Can you at least put a little bit more effort into the locations and make it a little bit more grittier like the original? So there's that. The gore was really fun. Some of the more inventive kills I've seen of the franchise. And that's the other thing that a lot of people don't touch upon. They just shoo these movies away. But on a technical level, in the makeup and kind of effects department, they're always well done. I give those people props because to make believable scars, cuts, blood, it is hard to do. And Saw has been one of those franchises to where, yeah, they've had minimal CG, but their practical effects are through the roof in that, in the horror genre. I think they're gross. They're there to unsettle you, make you shocked, and the grosser they are, the better, because I can believe that these people are getting attacked and whatnot. So I guess those would be all the positives, and I guess some of the negatives is that what's really weird about the Saw films is that all these people that are being tortured, they've done something bad in their lives, right? Where, they've stolen something, or, they did something where they accidentally killed someone, and, Jigsaw is there to kind of make them realize they did a shit thing, and, they have to redeem themselves. This movie, this installment in particular, has two characters to where they had done stuff in the past that were so heinous that I don't feel any sympathy for them at all. And that's kind of a huge issue, is that when you find out what they did, you want to know where they're coming from. Like in the first one, Cary Elwes plays a doctor, and Leigh Whannell plays, I forgot what he plays, but they've done some crap stuff in their past. But you kind of feel for them towards the end, because it's I feel like, it's a game about survival. They've learned their lesson long enough. They just want to get out, and you kind of want to root for them. You know what I'm saying? So, but this one, I can't believe no one's brought this up, but the last two people in the group, they're there, and you're like, all right, who's going to make it out? They did stuff so bad in their past that I actually couldn't believe that they went with this as character choices to make us feel like we're supposed to feel, slightly bad for them that they died and they can't, repent their sins or whatever. It's just, it was such a turnoff. Like, I was like, wow, like, we're like on a point of like, this is a slight plot spoiler, but one of them kills their baby, like an infant, like suffocates it. And that just to me just seems ugly and cruel versus like the other movies where it's like, oh, they might have robbed a bank or something like that. But it's like, you're killing your infant child with like no explanation except you were annoyed that it was whining, I guess. I don't know. It was weird. And like the other guy, another plot spoiler, but the other guy was in a car drunk, and his friend was driving, and it was a convertible, so he kind of fell out because he was drunk and he fell over on the highway. And then his friend like crashed into a gas tanker truck and exploded. It's like he like killed this like his friend. Like it was such a turnoff. I was like, even for a Saw franchise, like it was getting like ridiculous. Like these people are like terrible people. I hope they die. Okay, so all that out of the way. The ending twist of the film revealed to us that this is not a sequel. It is and it isn't. It's more along the lines of like a prequel or like an origin apprentice film. Alright, so here's the ending twist of the film. And here's why it was frustrating and why I kind of got into it. It was frustrating because Jigsaw, played by Tobin Bell, comes back. He appears in one scene and you're like, okay, why is he here? Because if you already saw Not Like I Am, you know that he died in the third one. And you know in the fourth one, they literally do an autopsy of him by pulling his face flat back and opening up his skull. He is clearly dead. He appears in the movie. And I'm like, oh my God. I immediately thought of like, they're going to use like the worst excuse ever. Like, oh, it's his twin or whatever. And like, I was fearing the worst. And I was like, oh my God. Like, this is really frustrating. I was figuring out like, why are they doing this right now? Why are they bringing them back? Then at the very end, the two main detectives or whatever that were, following the case and trying to stop it from happening and, try to save these people. So they're in this contraption and one of the guys, couldn't confess or whatever, because Jigsaw's voice was playing on the intercom to where he died. Then the other guy was confessing everything, and then the contraption kind of stopped. I'm like, oh shit, it's about to happen. Here is where the twist comes in. So the other guy that's dead gets up, and you realize how, he faked it or whatever. And then he reveals why he took this, other detective and put him in a trap, because he was corrupt. He was letting these thieves, go loose. He was making drug deals. He was a bad dude. So he was basically Jigsaw trying to prove a point to him. All the traps that we were seeing from these 5 people, it was in the past. The detectives were in the present. We were seeing 2 timelines happen at the same time. And I was like, oh, this is like some predestination shit right here. And so the way they described it was there was an apprentice to Jigsaw, and he was the guy that had the fake out death at the end. And he was so fascinated by John Kramer's message and how he would take these terrible people and see if they could redeem themselves, and almost like I said, like a Hail Mary situation, almost like a religious thing, to where what we were seeing, all the traps and with the people, that was Jigsaw's first ever run as the as the killer. Oh yeah, and sorry, spoiler alert. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. But, I mean, I highly doubt most of our listeners even want to see this movie, so it's fine. Anyways, he has an apprentice, and Jigsaw had never done this before. So he set up these array of traps in a barn somewhere, and we were witnessing it, but we thought that was the present. That was the past. That was John Kramer's first ever attempt at these things. So, in a sense, I can't really get mad at the cruelty of those 2 characters at the end, because they end up dying. I think I'm okay with it because John Kramer had never done this before, and he got like the most heinous people he could to teach them a lesson, but they ended up killing each other anyways because they're terrible people. So I think that's why he kind of lessened it back a little bit and was like, okay, maybe we should just get robberies now. So in a kind of weird way, it was almost like they were test subjects. They were gerbils for his weirdo experiment. So in a way, I'm okay with it, but at the same time, it's cruel, man. Like, she kills an infant child. So anyways, he has an apprentice or whatever, and so this apprentice felt like he needed to take this dirty-ass, corrupt cop down by teaching him a lesson, putting him in these traps, having him confess so he could take it, to wherever. And so he remembered what John Kramer did, and so he wanted to reenact Jigsaw's first ever killings. And so that's what he was doing, but what we were seeing was the past and the kind of like birth of all these, traps and whatnot. So yeah, and that's how it ends. And then the apprentice walks out, closes the door like all the Saw films do, and he closes the door, and it does the black wipe on the screen, and then the credits roll. And so when I saw that twist, I was like, yes, it was told in a very like expository, like very lazy, plot point by plot point reveal. But in a weird way, I was cool with it because I actually enjoyed the two dueling timelines. Because I wasn't even thinking about that. I was like, why is fucking Jigsaw alive? And then they explained it. I was like, I'm cool with it. That was fun. It was entertaining. It was creative. This is not a movie to win Oscars. This is not a movie that's going to be remembered by next year. I get that. But for the Halloween spirit, and me as a Saw fan, I actually think this is one of the better ones out of the latter half of the films. But I will say it's not a sequel. I mean, it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. It's more of like a prequel origin story, because that's another reason why I'm not as high on this one as the others, even though I do think it's a more entertaining one, is because at least with the first 7, regardless of what you think of the quality of the films, it was one coherent storyline with the same detectives following the same case over and over again. So it had that continuity there, but like Jigsaw was its own separate thing, to where I'm okay that they made this, but they don't need to make any more. This was just kind of like a nice origin, prequel, homage, sequel kind of, kind of movie to just show you guys on Halloween, show a different take on it. And I'm cool with it. As much as I am a fan of these movies, I will never, ever give these movies a B, ever. It's just like, as a critic, I can't do that. But I will say on a very, like I said, police procedural level, they're basic films, even with terrible acting and dialogue. I still have a fun time watching these movies, and just seeing the different kind of ideas that they attempt to make with these movies. But I'm going to end up giving Jigsaw a C+. I think it's absolutely acceptable as a Saw film, and I do appreciate that kind of little nugget at the end, and I think the Spirit Brothers did a pretty decent job. So, yeah. Joel, do you have anything to fire back with? Because I know that, for the past 3 months, Joel has basically wanted to kick me in the testicles to have me shut up about this movie. So after hearing about this now, yes, I will stop talking about it. But what is your interpretation from just everything I've said so far?
It's interesting that you're trying to convince me that this movie and also Saw 4, 5, 6, and 3D exist, because the series ended with Saw 3, and that's all I'll say. All right, so...
Well, I mean, Joel's correct, though. Like, if you look at the first 3, it's actually, like, a complete story, but 4, 5, 6, and 7, I thought did a decent job to kind of continue that story and still make it applicable to characters from the first 3. So, I don't know, I appreciate the attempt at the continuity that they did, and that's why I'm fine with 7, like 4, 5, 6, and 7, because it was a complete story arc, especially the ending twist of number 7. So, I don't know. Jigsaw was its own separate thing. Like I said, it was more of like an origin apprentice movie.
It's about the actions of a character who dies in the third one, and I just feel like any sort of bringing back is just a cheap ploy to continue the gimmick, and I'm not interested in seeing Jigsaw. I haven't seen any of the 4, 5, 6, and 7. I don't really plan to. There was a brief period earlier this year when I was just like, you know what, I might as well catch up with them, but stuff kind of filled in the gap in terms of releases, and I just, I'm not super interested. What I am interested is finding out this box office thing about Suburbicon. So I'm going to go ahead and do my guesses.
We'll get to that in just a second. I just want to say one thing real fast, that I was totally with you, Joel. For like a good 20, 25 minutes, I was frustrated and angry because they bring them back in a cheap ploy, and I was like, what is this garbage? But what we were seeing was the past before he was dead and everything.
I'm talking about any from Saw 4 onward, like the fact that he died in the third one.
Oh, and he still has tapes and stuff.
And he still has tapes. It just is a cheap ploy to keep the gimmick going.
True.
Like that's all.
I'll give you that.
I haven't seen the movies, so I'm not judging the movies themselves. I'm judging the fact that they felt like they had to bring it back, even though technically it was a trilogy, and technically the trilogy ended with his death, and they're about his actions. Just making it about the tapes that he left. It just seems like from afar seems like a cheap thing to.
And listen, I can't fault you. Like that is very cheap, because even when I was a fan, after the third one, I was like, wow, that wasn't a bad little horror franchise. And then when they were coming out with the fourth one, I was like, how are they going to spin this? And like, I don't know, I just bought into it and I was cool with it. But I get it. So I get why these movies are unpopular. They're just cheapo gore films, but like I said, I do think they're just decent police procedurals at best. So so enough about that. But I do give props to the Spirit Brothers for doing something slightly different. So I will say it's an entertaining film, definitely if you were into the Halloween spirit. But you're right though, the box office results, and I will actually touch upon Jigsaw and its Halloween kind of boost as well. But the box office is shocking. Okay, so Joel,
all right,
it is your week. So the clues I will give you is that Jigsaw came out. Thank You for Your Service and Suburbicon are the wide releases.
Okay, this is tough then because I don't know what the big surprise is with Suburbicon. Whether it's positive, like in terms of a bunch of money or a big loss. So I'm going to go with the fact that it's possibly not good news for Suburbicon. And I'm going to say that the top 5 are at number 1, Jigsaw. At number 2, Boo 2, A Medea Halloween. At number 3, At number 3, Thank You for Your Service. At number 4, Geostorm. I'm trying to remember what came out last week. Number 5. Oh God. At number 5, Happy Death Day. I have no idea. That's what I'm going to go with.
All right. Well, you got 2 right, but I will say that 4 out of the 5 that you picked are in there. All right. So we'll get to Suburbicon and Thank You for Your Service later. But right now, number 5 is Blade Runner 2049, barely hanging in there with 3.9 million. It's still not looking good. I don't care what kind of optimism you have. Right now, domestically, it's at 81, and worldwide, it's at 223 on a budget of 150. They are estimating that it needs to make about 500, just to cross a somewhat passable bare minimum like break even mark. So not doing good. Number 4 is Happy Death Day with 5.099, but I'll say 5.1 million for the sake of it. It's doing fine. Jason Blum has nothing to worry about, as always. Its budget is 4.8 million. It definitely made its money back in its opening weekend, but considering that this is Halloween weekend, not only did it capture on the Friday the 13th gimmick, but it's capturing on the Halloween gimmick, so congratulations, marketing. You killed it. But yeah, right now, it's worldwide, it's at 68. Domestically, it's at 48. It's doing fine. I don't even need to talk about it. Number 3, which took a almost 60% dip, is Geostorm with 5.6 million on its second weekend. It's so bad. Its budget is way more money than Joel and I will ever see in 100,000 lifetimes, with 120 million. Domestically, it's doing terrible with 23. Worldwide, I mean, it's got 113 overseas, so we're looking at 136, but even overseas box office cannot save this. Number 2, dropped 52%, but we knew carrying over into a Halloween weekend this was going to be fine. Tyler Perry's Boo 2, a Medea Halloween as it is listed, with $10 million. Its budget is $25, so with marketing and doubling that, I'd say about $60 to break even. It's only made $35 domestically. I think it's one of the weaker Tyler Perry movies in quite some time. So, I guess there it is. And believe it or not, I will never, ever, ever say this in my lifetime. Lionsgate has both of their films in the top 2 for this weekend. That's very weird. Number 1, obviously, with Jigsaw, with $16.2 million. It actually has a higher budget than most of the Saw films at $10 million. I know it doesn't seem high, but usually they're $5 million or under. But yeah, so what's really fascinating is I think most of that budget went to bringing people back, because not only did they bring Tobin Bell back, he's done 80s movies, so his pay raise is going to be a little bit higher. The editor of the film was the director of the 7th one, and they got Charlie Klausman or Klauser or whatever to do the music again. So he's done all of them. He's bringing him. So I'll guarantee most of that budget went to bringing people back because the movie is cheap. Domestically, it's at $16 million. Worldwide, it's at $25. To double the 10 with marketing and stuff, they probably spent maybe $5 million on marketing. So believe it or not, they actually probably broke even this weekend with the 25 worldwide. And it's going to have a humongous surplus on Halloween night. Just trust me. So it'll do just fine. Here are the shocking things. 1, Happy Death Day actually gained 237 theaters. It's been out for what seems like an eternity. So the theaters were capitalizing on that, so that's kind of impressive. It is actually still hanging in there, and it only dropped 30 or 28% from last weekend. But Halloween weekend, you knew that was going to happen. Okay. Thank You for Your Service came in at number 6 with $3.7 million. I don't know what it is with Miles Teller, but people do not like him. Most of his films, if he's not in a big blockbuster, they do not do well. He's one of my favorite kind of up-and-coming actors, but I do think that his personal life does impact, and his personality and stuff, people, that might just be a turnoff, or maybe just people aren't interested in his movies. But 3.7, once again, is another flop from him, especially when the budget is $20 million. I'm assuming with marketing and doubling that, we're looking at $50 million to break even. So, sorry, movie with Miles Teller and Amy Schumer. You might have a loss on your hands. Okay. Joel's going to be super baffled by this. So is everyone else. Because I cannot believe that this is it. This is the numbers. Thank You for Your Service opened up in 2,054 theaters at 3.7. That is by no means positive. That is terrible. I'm going to bring it up because Joel is going to wonder where I'm going with this. The Snowman opened up in 1,812 theaters, respectably lower than Thank You for Your Service. Do you remember its opening weekend? It was 3.3 million. Suburbicon did worse than that. Are you ready for this? Suburbicon.
I don't know if I'm ready for this.
Suburbicon opened up in the same amount of theaters roughly as Thank You for Your Service with 2,046 theaters. But it did worse than that and The Snowman and came in at number 9 with 2.8 million. This is, I believe Scott Mendelson put this on a Forbes article. It is the 3rd worst opening for Paramount ever in a wide release fashion.
Wow.
2.8 million. That is worse than The Snowman, people. Like, I cannot believe that it did that poorly. And so I'll get to Joel's thoughts in just a second. But on a lighter bit of news, Thor Ragnarok actually opened up overseas this weekend, and it garnered $107 million opening weekend overseas. So the fact that it hasn't even gotten here yet, and it's already made that much, congratulations, Marvel. We don't need to say it, but yeah, made another hit. All right, so going back to Joel's thoughts on this, Joel, does the Suburbicon thing kind of shock you?
It shocks me to that degree that it's one of the worst opening weekends. That's amazing. They didn't really sell it though.
They really didn't. They had one trailer.
Yeah, they had that one trailer that played before every other movie, and I feel like people probably got tired of it. So I'm not super surprised that it kind of flopped, but to that degree, that is surprising. 2.8 million in 2000. Yeah, that's not very much money.
No.
That's oh my gosh, wow. Number 9 as an opening weekend number is very that's pretty bad. I mean, The Snowman was number 8, last week, so it couldn't even do that, which is pretty crazy. That's a surprising number for sure.
Yeah, it's getting pretty bad. But I guess on some more positive news, Boo 2, in the same time frame as when the first Boo came out, is doing $20 million less than its predecessor. So I think people might be getting tired of that good old Medea. You're getting scared, people? Anyways, another awesome piece of news. The top movies of 2017, domestically, the top 5. I never thought I'd be saying this. Now, it's not going to last for long because we got Justice League coming out, Thor, and Star Wars, so it could all threaten this. But it jumped up to number 5. Number 5 domestically of the year. It is 10 million away from number 4. It's sitting... Joel, check this. We haven't, we did this episode almost 2 months ago. This movie, domestically, has made $323 million. That is ridiculous.
Wow.
And if you want to know some even creepier stuff, worldwide at this very moment, it's got $666 million, the devil's number, so that's kind of cool. So that's nice. Really fun for that. But yeah, that's it for the box office, guys. Really nothing. I know Joel likes to do the kind of pluses and minuses. Really nothing in particular that I see. I guess to talk about the Weinstein Company, because they do have 2 movies currently in rotation right now. Actually, a few of them. Tulip Fever actually went on a 63% plus. It went from 99th place last weekend to 58, and it gained 11 theaters. And I mean, it only made $1,000, but I mean, that's still kind of impressive given the kind of cloud that's over that company right now.
I guess maybe people were like, we should see this before it leaves.
Yeah, right.
or something. I don't know.
And then the main movie that we reviewed, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, I didn't even mention that. I mean, it didn't do well, but it came in at number 25 with a almost 100% plus from last week because it gained 29 theaters from 30 or from 4 last week, and it made 221,000. I mean, it's not terrible, but I mean, it's kind of terrible. But we like the movie, so please go support it. And that's pretty much it in terms of ones that I don't really see anything kind of shocking. So that will do it for the box office results, guys. Tell us what your thoughts are down below. That is it for 205, guys. Next week is episode 206, and Joel, we got a little Marvel action happening next week. What's going on for 206?
Yeah, our solo review next week is going to be Thor Ragnarok. That's going to be a big one. It'll probably prompt a lot of discussion, so we aren't going to have any extra reviews. But that's going to be the big one. I'm excited. I'm seeing it Thursday evening. Thursday is my birthday, so I'm seeing it at a movie house eatery. And so I'll have dinner, movie. It's going to be a lot of fun. The movie looks and sounds terrific. It's getting real raves, and I can't wait. So
yeah, should be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see it myself. I'm seeing it Sunday. Next Sunday, and it's another Marvel hit, man. They keep getting better and better. It just seems like every movie they've been coming out with since Civil War has just been getting really great, kind of positive reactions. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And of course, we got, Thor and then Black Panther and Avengers next year. It's going to be insane. So yeah, that will be next week, guys, for the 206th episode, Thor Ragnarok, directed by that one guy who made a cheap satire of vampires. It's still hard to believe that he did that. Anyways, so that will do it for this weekend's episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Joel, where can the people find you online?
You can find my writing at joelonfilm.com. I've got a review of Suburbicon up there right now, as well as some other ones. I reviewed 3 movies this week for Dallas Movie Screenings, in addition to The Killing of Sacred Deer, which we jointly reviewed. We also jointly reviewed Tragedy Girls, which is a horror comedy about a couple of high school girls who are serial killers disguising themselves as another serial killer. We differed greatly on this one. I know you enjoyed it. I did not at all. I found it to be really ugly and kind of annoying, to be honest. But I've got a review for that up there, and also a pretty solid little documentary called 7852 Hitchcock's Shower Scene, which of course takes a look at the shower scene in Psycho. And sort of tracks its influences, its historical, for the purposes of historical record, talks to a lot of people influenced by it, including Martin Scorsese, very interestingly enough, for Raging Bull. And, pretty neat little slice of film history. So y'all can find my reviews at dallasmoviescreenings.com.
That is correct. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at RealChaseLee. YouTube channel, you can, like what Joel said, we got our Tragedy Girls review, and that's something we don't review on this show, but if you want to find some extra content, you can go to his website, go to my YouTube page, we got it all there. And of course, Dallas Movie Screenings, I do stuff with Joel, like he said. For this show, please like, subscribe, Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, we're everywhere, and so please spread this around. Like I told you, I will keep my word. If it gets over at least 100 downloads, then for next week's show, I will, if you comment and you want it, I will send you a copy of Cooties. I will sign it on the back because that is my only crowning achievement. Joel's going to do so much better in his life than I will, and I will just always be jealous, but I will always hold on to that one special nugget of greatness in my very average and terrible critic career. So, but yeah, if you do want that, please share it around. Let's download
I will always remember you, Christopher.
Oh, thanks, Carl. So, yay-hole. All right, so yeah, but I am serious. Please spread this around. Let's get to 100 downloads, and I will definitely keep my promise on that. So that will do it for this week, guys. Real Men, a movie podcast. And hey, listen, if you made it through this entire podcast and you're not a movie fan, well, hopefully Joel and I convinced you to be one. We love you all. You guys are badass. The intro and outro music to this podcast is done by my friends band Fervent Roze. Check them out. And guess what? Everything is in the link in the description below. We will see you guys next week for another Disney-dominated weekend with a Marvel film. It will be spectacular. We'll see you guys. Bye-bye.